Hello and welcome into this week's edition of RNN Talks right here on Racing News Now. As always, I'm your host Garth Allen. Thank you once again for joining me tonight. We have a few newsworthy items for you before we get into tonight's predictions. Not a lot going on tonight. We do have one major news item for you that you have probably heard by now if you haven't been living under a rock, but we are going to discuss it a little bit. We'll get to that in a moment, though. We'll start off with some ARCA news for this weekend as they're in action 2 days from now. Friday night from Talladega. They're down there with the NASCAR boys. Two drivers actually making their first starts of the season this weekend. 18-year-old Blaine Perkins, one of those. He will be driving the 98 car for Mason Mitchell Motorsports. This will be the first of a 5-race slate for him this year with Mason Mitchell Motorsports. Those being the June race at Pocono, Michigan, Chicago, and Iowa. The other 4 races that we will see Blaine Perkins at this year in the ARCA Racing Series. Also making his first start of the season this weekend will be Brandon Lynn for Venturini Motorsports. That is the first of a 2-race schedule that he currently has with Venturini Motorsports, the other being at Charlotte in May. Other notables that will be in the field this weekend: Bobby Gerhart making his second of 2 starts of the season. He really only races Daytona and Talladega anymore. Besides that, Michael Self will be returning, the winner from Daytona, and your points leader going into Salem, and then he wasn't in Salem, so obviously lost the points lead. He will be returning this weekend in Talladega, looking to go 2 for 2 on the plate tracks this year. Leilani Munter is also back in the 20 car for Venturini Motorsports this weekend. Jesse Iwuji is in the race as well in the 34 car for Basham. Sean Corr will be in the race as well in the 43 for Empire Racing. We'll see a return of Bo Lamastus. Dave Mader will also be in the race, 62-year-old Dave Mader. Max Tolman will make a return. He'll be in the 78 this weekend for Mason Mitchell Motorsports. Still don't have a confirmation on who will be in either Chad Bryant Racing car this weekend, the 22 or the 77, so we'll have to keep an eye on that as well. So now we'll move to the big news, I guess, this week. It was announced today that Matt Kenseth will be returning to Monster Energy NASCAR Cup Series racing on a part-time basis for the remainder of this season. His first race back will be in a couple weeks here at Kansas, and he will be returning to Roush Fenway Racing. And this is the interesting part to me. Even more interesting than the fact that he is going back to Roush is the fact that he is going to be splitting the 6 car with Trevor Bayne for the rest of the season. Now, what does this mean exactly? Does this mean we are phasing Trevor Bayne out now? Is this more or less the end of Trevor Bayne's Cup career? Not necessarily completely the end, because he might land somewhere else after this season at a lower team. But in essence, is this the end of his Cup career? And if so, why? And I know there's a lot of you out there screaming at me right now that he's not put up the results. He's not been very good in the Cup Series. And to that, I say, look back at the first few races of last season. Only 1 or 2 times did he finish outside the top 15 in the first 10 or 12 races of the season. And then I don't think coincidentally, right when Ricky Stenhouse won at Talladega last season, Trevor Bayne's performance really fell off, and really after that, he did string together a couple of top 10s after that, but really rarely could crack the top 20. And the thing with that is, I think, because if you look before Talladega last season, Bain and Stenhouse were very even. They were both in the top 10, top 15 on a weekly basis for the most part. But then you look after Talladega, and there's a huge disparity between where they are finishing week in and week out. Generally, Stenhouse was top 10, top 15 material after that, and Trevor Bain was doing good to run in the top 25. Now, you can say what you want about that, but I truly believe that Stenhouse, Roush was looking for a horse to back in that race, and that's why they were both running fairly competitively between each other in the beginning portions of the year. Ricky Stenhouse happened to win before Trevor Bain did, so they throw all the good equipment at Ricky Stenhouse. Meanwhile, Trevor Bain is left with the scraps, and this is why he's running in the back. Now, do I think Trevor Bain is Jimmy Johnson level talent? No. Do I think Trevor Bain is talented? Yes. The problem is that he is, like I said, getting the scraps from Roush Fenway Racing right now and not getting the best equipment that they can give him. So I think in essence he's not getting the full he's not getting everything that he should to be able to run up front. I think he's doing the best he can with an unfortunate set of circumstances, and I think unfortunately that has looked worse on him than it should have, and I think it's even looked worse on him than it should have to Jack Roush, which is why we're bringing Matt Kenseth back in and seemingly phasing Trevor Bain out. Now, there is another possibility to this, and it may have nothing to do with Trevor Bain's on-track performance. The reason they're bringing Matt Kenseth in might have something to do with the fact that it has been very well documented that Trevor Bain has multiple sclerosis, disease in the back, basically where you have curvature in your spinal cord. And what I wonder, and I hope this isn't the case, is that Trevor's MS might be advancing and worsening, and that might be hindering his ability to drive the car. If that's the case, that would be a legitimate reason to start phasing him out, because if you got a health issue like that, it's probably not a good idea to be driving a car at 200 mile an hour week in and week out. It would be an unfortunate set of circumstances, but I think it is possible that that is what is happening here. Do I have any concrete facts on that? No. But I think those are the two likely scenarios as to what is happening here, as to why Matt Kenseth is coming back and why he is coming back when he is coming back. So, if you have any other thoughts on this, if you have any other ideas, anything I might have looked over as to maybe a possible reasoning why Trevor Bain is seemingly getting phased out here and why Matt Kenseth is back, leave it down in the comments. I would love to know what you think. So we'll go ahead and move into predictions for this weekend, and we'll start off with the ARCA Racing Series. They are in action this weekend for the General Tire 200 from the Talladega Super Speedway. And as we talked about on pole position on Monday, there's really those core group of drivers you can look at as your contenders week in and week out. But you've also got a few names thrown in here that we don't see week to week that are possible winning potential here. I mean, you've got Bobby Gerhardt here, who is a master of Daytona and Talladega in the ARCA Racing Series. You got Michael Self, who won in Daytona. You obviously can't count him out. Leilani Munter was strong in Daytona as well. You can't count her out. Sean Corr has proven to be fairly capable on plate tracks as well. Brandon Lynn almost won this race last season, so he's probably going to be up there as well. There's a lot of names you can throw out here that aren't championship contenders in the ARCA Racing Series because they're not running week to week, but they have a legitimate shot at winning this week. So add that to the dartboard that Talladega and Daytona are, and it makes it very hard to pick a winner for this race. There's legitimately about 10 or 15 names I could throw out here that legitimately have a shot at winning this race. So we're just going to throw that dart right at the dartboard, and it landed on Sheldon Creed. Sheldon Creed wins this week in Talladega. Like I said, you just throw the dart at the dartboard, hope it sticks in the middle. Sheldon Creed has been fast every race so far this season, as have his MDM Motorsports teammates. We're going to say Sheldon Creed wins this weekend in Talladega in the General Tire 200. So now moving on to the NASCAR side of things for this weekend from Talladega. We'll start with the Xfinity Series and the 27th Annual Sparks Energy 300. That will be on Saturday afternoon, 3 p.m. Eastern. And this is another Dash for Cash race, as the last 2 weeks have been, which, again, means no Cup regulars in this race, which could make for an interesting race. It's one thing to have short tracks with no Cup regulars. It's another to have a plate race with no Cup regulars. And as we look down through this entry list, we'll name off some of the guys that you're not necessarily used to seeing, that you might be interested in knowing are in the race this week. And also another thing to point out, there are 42 cars entered for this weekend, which means 2 cars will go home on the Xfinity side of things. Shane Lee will be making his second series start in that number 3 car for Richard Childress Racing. Remember, back to Bristol a couple weeks ago, he made his first start in the Xfinity Series, making his second start this weekend. Noah Gragson returns for his second start in the series this weekend after his fantastic run last weekend in Richmond. Austin Cindric will be in the 22 for Team Penske this weekend. John Hunter Nemechek will be in the 42 for Chip Ganassi Racing. Ty Majeski will be in the 60 for Roush Fenway Racing. And Chase Briscoe will be in that 98 car for Biaggi Dinbesti Racing with Stuart Haas Racing. So that is your rotating cast of names that you might be interested in knowing are in the race and where this weekend. Now for a winner. Again, just got to throw the dart at the dartboard, and it lands on Justin Allgaier. Justin Allgaier wins this weekend in the Sparks Energy 300. I feel like this is the most worthless prediction segment we've ever had on RNN Talks, because who knows what these races are going to hold. I mean, you know as well as I do, if you have watched a Talladega race, there is no predicting who wins these races. Absolutely no predicting. You know there are certain guys that are good on plate tracks, but that doesn't mean they're going to be anywhere close to the front at the end of the race with the unpredictability of these races. So we're just going to say Justin Allgaier wins in Talladega. He had speed in Daytona back in February. He's always good on plate tracks. We'll say Justin Allgaier wins this weekend in the Sparks Energy 300 at the Talladega Superspeedway. Now, we will move on to the Monster Energy NASCAR Cup Series, the 49th Annual Geico 500 on Sunday. That'll be 2 p.m. Eastern on Sunday. And this is another one. I hadn't even noticed that. That's interesting. Timothy Peters will be in the Cup race this weekend in the 92 car for RBR Enterprises. Anyone that's familiar with the Truck Series will know the name Timothy Peters. He was a mainstay there for the longest time until Red Horse Racing shut down a couple years ago, and he's just been kind of bouncing around now. Couple races here and there. Nice to see him at the track this weekend, as well as Cole Custer making another Monster Energy NASCAR Cup Series start in the 51 for Rick Ware Racing this weekend. Joey Gase will also be in the 00 for Starcom Racing. So, as we look through this entry list, we're going to throw another dart at the dartboard, and we are going to say Joey Logano wins the Geico 500 on Sunday from Talladega Superspeedway. Joey Logano has a decent pedigree in the past at these plate tracks, and Joey Logano gets it done on Sunday from Talladega in the Geico 500. So that just leaves one more race for this weekend, that being another early morning F1 race on Sunday, the Azerbaijan Grand Prix. And talk about unpredictability. There's a certain level of unpredictability with F1 this season, given the fact that Lewis Hamilton has had a slow start to the season. Sebastian Vettel might go for 3 out of 4 this weekend. But then you've got the Red Bull guys that threw in some strategy a couple weeks ago in China, and Ricciardo ends up winning the race. So on the surface, F1 races might look easy to predict, but not so much the case. That being said, I am going to go for this weekend, I'm going to go once again with Sebastian Vettel. Now, I'm doing this let's be completely honest here. I'm doing this for the easy way out, because we have seen the past who knows how many weeks, every time I say this person should be the easy pick, but I'm going to go with this person, it always ends up being the person I say, this person is the easy pick. Well, Sebastian Vettel is the easy pick in F1 right now. He won the first 2 races of the season, had speed in China, got pushed back in the pack a little due to strategy in the middle portions of the race, and then ended up getting screwed over in that wreck with Max Verstappen late, and ended up with a much worse finish than he should have had in China. That being said, he's had a lot of speed to start the season, and there's nothing right now that says to me Sebastian Vettel won't win this weekend in Azerbaijan. So, Sebastian Vettel wins the Azerbaijan Grand Prix this weekend on Sunday morning. So that is your predictions for this weekend, and as always, I think that will wrap things up here for RNN Talks tonight. Thank you once again for joining me tonight. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button if you haven't already, and hit that bell for notifications. It's the only way you can keep up with everything happening here on RNN. Hit that like button if you like the video. It is much appreciated. And don't forget to support us on Patreon. That's patreon.com/racingnewsnow. It's the only way we will continue to better our content into the future and continue to give you quality content. So with that, this has been RNN Talks. I'm Garth Allen for Racing News Now.